Hello, my beautiful friends. Thank you for joining me once again in this eternal present moment of God's love. I'm so grateful for all the support and the comments and the feedback. It's so wonderful to hear everyone's experiences and to share this journey with so many on the set. We're all on the same path. There's only one thing to do: presence and purification. So I received a comment that I thought was very interesting and I thought many of us could benefit from talking about. And this can be kind of tricky depending on how you look at it. And here it is. It says, and this was on the video I made, how to facilitate a peaceful state. They said, how would you maintain a peaceful state of surrender in the face of an abuser or a physical threat that you cannot permanently remove yourself from? This is a deep question. This is most certainly a cycle of suffering, which I made my a recent video. It's a foundational video of kind of the way I'm teaching, called Escaping the Cycles of Suffering Through Presence, Purification, and God's Love. Please check that out, because this scenario is really, if we boil anything down, they all have similarities. It's all just different types of cycles of suffering. What is a cycle of suffering? It's a cycle we get caught in, whether it be physical, an external threat or external pain coming into us, internal pain caused by chemistry, wrong chemistry, and toxicity and genetics. That's another video. That's regenerative detoxification, how we heal all that. That's coming up. That's going to be a foundational video as well. But they're all just different types of cycles of suffering. And what happens is we get caught in these cycles that we seemingly cannot escape. I was in this cycle with my diet, changing my diet. I thought I was never going to be able to change my diet. And I was at the point where I was eating things I know were harming my body, and I could immediately feel the effect of them. They would hurt my body. I would feel like garbage. It would make things worse, and I knew I had to change it. But, a transitioning video, transitioning from a standard American diet or even junk food, vegan diet to raw foods is a very difficult process, and that's also going to be another foundational video. I have lots of videos on the docket, so please stay tuned and please subscribe and like if you are resonating with this content and want to hear more. I appreciate hearing from all of you. Remember to hit the bell so you get notifications. I always forget to mention these things. Thank you to my friend Arcturian Blue Light for mentioning these things. So these are all just different cycles of suffering. So a lot of times when we're caught in abusive relationships, this can be physically or verbally or mentally or emotionally abusive relationships. This can not only be relationships like between spouses or family members, but also jobs. And this is my main experience with abusive relationships is at my employers. And I talked about this in my video dealing with stressful jobs and how meditation changed my life. And the foundation for escaping any cycle of suffering is basically the same, because it comes down to presence and purification, because again, these are two of the highest devotions to God. So when we commit our life to these, no matter what cycle we're caught in, physical, mental, the cycle of endless thought driving us crazy, stress, anxiety, whether it's an external physical threat or an internal physical threat, a symptom, we basically have to get to the same point. And we basically, if you keep stepping back, we see we have to go through the same processes. Like we have to stand in the center of the circle. Another video I just made from the Tao Te Ching. Very important, because when we stand in the center of the circle, we can start to break our attachments to things that are trapping us in these cycles of suffering. This is also fantastic and profound. So again, we're caught in a physically abusive let's talk specifically about this. We're caught in a physically abusive relationship or environment or job, and we feel like we're stuck there. We don't know how to get out. And I feel you, because this was my experience in many of my jobs. I was stuck in this job that was causing me so much mental and emotional trauma and stress, and I didn't know that I couldn't leave. I felt like I had no options. And I've been stuck in jobs where I was physically getting wrecked from the job, but I couldn't leave. My back was destroyed, and I had to work through excruciating pain because I needed the job and I couldn't pay my bills. And so there's many factors to all these. So if we're in an abusive, excuse my itching my ear, if we're in an abusive situation, let's focus on a few things that are going to help us escape this particular cycle of suffering. They specifically ask, how do we facilitate a state of peace if we're in a threatening environment? Now, this can be, you have to do the best you can, and and it all comes back to, at the very top of all these processes, is presence purification, is surrendering to God and realizing that no matter what decision we make, as hard as it may seem like it is for us, and if we want to escape these situations, God will take care of us completely. That's why surrender and presence is so important. Now, if we don't have the ability or the capacity or the balance, which we're going to talk about, to escape these situations, that is okay. It is, again, let's kind of come back to this point too. We go through these cycles of suffering not by accident. Now that can seem like, why am I suffering? Well, there's karma. We could talk about that. But because to escape these cycles of suffering, we have to gain wisdom. It is through suffering we grow closer to God. It is through suffering we gain wisdom, and it is through wisdom we gain the ability to help others with their suffering. So these cycles of suffering are very difficult, and we can always ask ourselves why when we're stuck in them, when we can't figure out how to get out of them. But we come to the process of breaking free from the illusion, which is presence, purification, God's love, standing in the center of the circle, breaking these attachments. Let's also talk about specifically how to deal with abusive relationships. A lot of it comes down to our emotional state isn't strong enough or balanced enough to be able to separate ourselves from abusive relationships, or we're just simply not balanced enough, or we haven't raised our perspective or our energy or our vibration enough to be able to break free from these situations. Because remember, as we naturally raise our vibration and our perspective through presence purification and God's love, this will naturally separate us from things that do not serve us, including jobs, environments, relationships. So this is very important. So these are always going to be the focus no matter what type of cycle. The reason I call them cycles of suffering is because we get caught in them and we think we can never escape. I'm here to give you hope, my friends. You can escape. You will escape. Just keep God in your mind and your heart always, and everything will work out perfectly. And then eventually we reach a point when we're looking back at these cycles of suffering and we've gained this wisdom where we say, suffering is grace. That's a hard concept for some people to be able to take in. How can suffering be grace? What? How does that make any sense? But again, like I said before, we gain wisdom and from this suffering, which allows us to help others and escape. In this wisdom we gain from the suffering, we help others, and it helps us remove ourselves from the suppression, whatever it may be, or the aggravators, whatever it may be, physical, mental, spiritual, emotional thoughts. So all these things work together. A few other things, I have a little notepad here because I want to make sure I cover all these things because this is an important topic. We're talking about escaping from, how do we facilitate a state of peace when we're in a very aggravating, physically or mentally, whatever environment. It's hard because you have these negative energies. We have to become the observer. Whether your pain is caused by internal, like a symptom from improper diets or toxins, what have you, or your pain is caused externally. We have to work on ourselves and facilitate as much balance as possible until we can start to detach ourselves from our thoughts, from the physical reality. For instance, when I have physical pain from something, I try to observe it and say, this body is having pain, right? Obviously, there are many different levels to this, especially if you're in an abusive relationship. Here's another thing, another tool we can use as we continue to focus on presence and purification and God's love and surrendering completely to God. Because when we do that, everything will be taken care of, is removing fear from our life. The fear of making a wrong decision, the fear of leaving a stressful, abusive type of relationship or job. What's one tool we can use to remove fear? Now, I mentioned this in my video, How Do I Meditate, which I cover mostly of the Kriya Yoga, which is what I practice. I'll try to remember to share all these links below. And one thing we can do is called the Navi Kriya. And this will help us remove fear from our body. How do we do the Navi Kriya? Now, I have an example of doing this, and I explain it in my How Do I Meditate video, so please check that out, but I'll go over it briefly. Basically, what we do in the Navi Kriya is we're going to do different types of neck locks. We're going to do a forward neck lock, and then a backward neck lock, right? This is to kind of hold the energy in as far as I believe. And so you're going to do a forward neck lock, and what we're going to do is we're going to take our fingers like this, and we're going to press into your belly button with the neck lock, and we're going to mentally chant Om, 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 Om in the belly button. You can't really see me. Let me stand up. Got my notepad here. So I'm going to be sitting down, but we got the neck lock, and we're going to be chanting Om, Om, Om in our head, Om, Om. And the reason we're putting our fingers in our belly button is we're just trying to kind of get an idea where our chakra is, our third chakra. Now, if you can mentally do it with your third chakra without using your hands, you can also do that. So you're going to chant Om about 100 times. Again, what I do to estimate this is called Om Japa. This is called, Navi Kriya. Om Japa is something we're going to cover later. This is called Navi Kriya. So what I do is I have someone help me, or I just set a timer for like 10 seconds and mentally count how many ohms I can do and then multiply it. So I do about 1:30, let's say, give or take. It doesn't have to be exact. Do about 100 ohms, front neck lock, right? This is mentally, you're saying Om, Om, and you're pressing the belly button where your chakra is. And then we do with about 25, about a quarter of what we did in front and the back. We do a backward neck lock. You can do the thumbs the same if you want and put it right about in your spine where your third chakra is and say Om, Om mentally about 25 times. So 100 times in the front, 25 times in the back. Now I try to do this as a part of before all my meditations when I meditate in the evening, because this will help remove fear and this will help gain some balance, and this will help whatever cycle of suffering we're in, because a lot of times we can't make the necessary changes in our life because we're either too comfortable or we're afraid of what the outcome is going to be. And remember, kind of going back to another quote, I quote the Tao Te Ching quite a bit. Do your work and step back, right? So this is saying, you can kind of apply this to anything. Don't worry about it. Surrender to the cosmic beloved. Everything will take care of itself. Again, this can be tricky when we're stuck in difficult emotional situations and mental situations and abusive situations. But again, we're going to take all these things and apply them. And through this, and through presence, and through our devotion to God, we will escape any cycle of suffering. Because that is the gift God has given us. As when we start to recognize the illusion and become the observer, we are granted this beautiful divine blessing of getting higher perspectives and breaking free from these cycles of suffering and being able to help others. Again, another important aspect of any cycle of suffering that we're stuck in. All of my videos are basically an extension of escaping cycles of suffering. No matter, we're just talking about different aspects of it. Is detaching ourselves, right? Detaching ourselves, cleaning. Right, yeah, we have to detach ourselves. So standing in the center of a circle is such an important concept, that because a lot of times we have attachments that keep us trapped in mental traps, emotional traps, physical traps. Removing obligation can be a thing. I made a video about that as well, and how the burden of obligation is very important. Eating the right diet, purification, because we can be kept in lower states through a bad diet, because a lot of diets that we're programmed to eat are suppressive. Removing the aggravators as best as we can, given our situation. You can only do the best you can. So not judging ourselves for not being able to do more, and accepting where we're at as being the perfect place on our journey, right? So all of these are important. Purifying the body, removing the aggravators, which is another foundational video I made. I'm going to try to make a playlist when I get around to it of all my foundational videos. What are the aggravators? There are things that aggravate our mind or aggravate our body. And if our mind is constantly aggravated, aside from stressful environments, obviously, through other things that we have some sort of illusion of control over, then we can try to remove these things to help the state. Again, do what you can with where you're at to utilize these foundational things, and it will allow you to evolve your perspective and your vibration and escape the cycles we are caught in. So let's talk about balancing the chakras. This is very important too, because it is our energy centers, and we can have a lot of stuck energy in offshoots of the stuck energy. So part of Kriya Yoga, which I mentioned in my how do I meditate video, which I actually forgot to include, which I'm going to mention now. I'll go over briefly Kriya Yoga, and I encourage you to look into Kriya Yoga some more if you're interested, especially the teacher Forrest Knudsen, I believe his name is. I can link him below. He has great videos on teaching the Kriya Yoga practice. What we're going to talk about is balancing the chakras through Om Japa in the chakras. How do we do Om Japa? This is going to clean the chakras, and we can practice this every day. This is a very important thing that I add into all my meditations. So for Kriya Yoga, these are kind of the steps we're going to go through. The first thing we do is something called Mahamudra, which again, please see my video, How Do I Meditate? Mahamudra is basically a stretch. You're doing a half of a butterfly stretch, holding your breath, stretching until you can't, until your breath's exhausted, then letting your breath go. Check out that. So we do the Mahamudra, which is stretching. We do the Navi Kriya, which I explained, which is removing fear. And we can do this every day as part of our practice. Then we do the HRV-R, which is heart rate variability resonance breathing, which is making the out breath longer than the in breath. There's an app called Resonant Breathing app. Check that out. It has a preset timer. That gets us into deep states in our parasympathetic system, deep relaxed states where we can experience blissfulness, where we can experience clarity and divine inspiration, as I've received many times. And we can receive the upgrade in our energy, right? We get in these deep, so Mahamudra, the stretching, Navi Kriya, getting rid of the fear, HRV-R, resonant breathing, getting into the relaxed state, and then we introduced Om Japa in the chakras. How do we do Om Japa in the chakras? Basically, after we do let's say I do half my time in my meditation of the breathing, the HRV-R resonant breathing app. And then the other half, after that's finished, you hear a bell on the app. I immediately go into Om Japa in the chakras. How do we do Om Japa? This is cleaning the chakras, cleaning all the junk and trying to center and balance them. We start at the root chakra, and as we're meditating, we're going to mentally chant Om. Now, there's some variability. You can kind of do whatever feels good to you, but this is how I do it. I mentally chant Om 3 times in my root chakra. Om, Om, Om. You don't have to put your hands there. Just mentally find it, right? And then you basically work your way up the chakras, chanting Om in each of the chakras: root chakra, sacral, solar, heart, throat. And then we actually stop at the medulla, which is at the base of the spine, top of the base of the brain, top of the spine. And then we do Om Japa 3 times there. So we do all these chakras: throat, heart, throat, up to the medulla, stop there, Om 3 times, each mentally as you're laying down meditating. And then we go back down, Om 3 times. So we go Om, Om, Om 3 times, all the chakras to the medulla. And then Om 3 times all the way down in each one. That's one round. And I do 3 rounds of that. So this is called Om Japa on the chakras. And this is how we cleanse the chakras. So that's why I love Kriya Yoga. And I believe I told the story of how Kriya Yoga was introduced to me through some kind of divine type of intervention. It was given to me by showing me a recreation of Yogananda driving a car as his name was mentioned in a video I was listening to. It's wild, which led me to the Autobiography of a Yogi, which I highly recommend, and learning about Kriya Yoga. So these are all things we can do if we're stuck in these difficult situations, these difficult cycles of suffering. There's so many cycles of suffering. But again, the foundation for escaping them is purification, presence, balance, standing in the center of the circle, removing fear, balancing our entire being, including our chakras, right? All of these things will work together, and they will raise your perspective and raise your vibration and allow you to escape these cycles of suffering. And the most beautiful thing occurs after we escape these cycles of suffering. We can look back and say, wow, this suffering I went through was so great because it taught me so much. I grew so much closer to God. God was giving me a lesson. It can be hard when the situations we find ourselves in are very difficult, physically, abusive, mentally, emotionally. It can be hard to see this way when we're in them. But I'm here telling you, you will escape from your cycle of suffering, and it will be beautiful. God is here for you always. You are loved unconditionally. You have never made a wrong decision. Even if you're in a job or a relationship, you say, I never should have gotten in this relationship because it is abusive or X, Y, and Z. You are always going to be in that relationship. That is just part of your journey. There's something for us to learn from that. There is a cycle of suffering for us to escape so we can ascend out of it and become the divine example. Because we are here to learn, we are here to teach. Learn as you go, teach as you learn as you teach. That just came to me. I don't know if that's already a saying, but that came to me. I just thought it was so profound to think about it like this, because we're always learning in some aspect. Let me just go over my notes, make sure I got everything. Yeah, so it's all about balance. No matter what cycle we're caught in, what trouble, what mental trap, we need to do what we can in our environment, to everything we can to facilitate a peaceful state. Get away from that environment when you can, if possible. If you have to get away from an oppressive environment, an abusive environment, and you're able to, just to meditate, just to focus on clearing the aggravators, just on facilitating how to reconstitute the mind. I made a video on that as well. Do anything you can. And remember, God's love will solve all of our problems, right? And we just have to utilize all these beautiful blessings and all these beautiful inspirations that we've all been given, and all these spiritual works have provided us to escape these points. So thank you for joining me, my friends. If you have, again, I'm just so grateful to be sharing this moment with you. If you have any further questions or comments or suggestions, I love to hear them. I love hearing from you. I love hearing about your experiences and your perspectives, because again, we can all learn something from each other. And I'm working on my YouTube. I also make videos on TikTok and share them other places, but I'm kind of almost focusing more on YouTube. So I'm working on making better and more in-depth content for everyone that can just be helpful. I'm trying to be out here just sharing my experience and my perspective from what I've learned and trying my best to surrender. Now we might escape one cycle of suffering just to get caught in another. That's okay, because the answer is always the same, right? We just go back to the foundation: presence, which is I am God's eternal love pouring forth in the present, divine present moment. Purification, purifying the body, removing the aggravators, standing in the center of the circle, balancing the chakras, removing the fear. We utilize all these things. We will be free from the illusion. Namaste, my friends.